dominated by some community or some other peoples. And also it's in my experience, some leaders are very powerful and some leaders are less powerful. And also some leaders are very like change agents and some are less change agent, and some leaders from the movement, some project leaders from the projects. So in this context, we frame today's discussions in 4 questions. And I kindly request to the panelists to go the frame which we share already. The first question is what is community leadership? Understanding from your own context and work. That's the first questions. And second question is how have you developed in non-violent community leadership in your own work and social mobilization and transformation? Sorry, it's non-violent community leadership in your own work. Third question is what roles are played by community leaders for the community-led transformation or non-violent social mobilization and transformation. And last one is sharing 2 to 3 stories or transformation change, a kind of learning and in your community leadership development experiences. For the discussions, basically we already share the role. It's first we start from the Georgia, and then we go to the Zambia, UK, and then Canada and Mexico. So now I request to Irakli. Kakabadze is a basically formally a teacher and researcher on peace studies and conflict resolution. Irakli is currently the coordinator of the Gandhi Foundation Georgia as a writer in residence at Yale University. Irakli had experimented with different forms of polyphonic writing to enhance cross-cultural communication and dialogue. He also has taught at the Georgia Institute for Public Affairs. Irakli is a member of the Jai Jagat Advisory Committee and was part of the organizing committee for the Jai Jagat in Georgia. I would like to request first Irakli Kakabadze to share your experiences, learnings based on the given framework of the questions. I request to Irakli.
Hello, everyone, and Jai Jagat to everyone, and happy 4th of July to everyone. I'm very highly privileged to be in the society of those distinguished community leaders who have done so much to advance the cause of equality and justice and freedom around the world. Today, we have a period where the world is suffering a lot from different problems, including the social problems, and starting from perhaps the social problems and the problems of inequality. And our inspiration from following the example and the path and the road of Jai Jagat has been following Rajagopalji and Jilji and our friends around the world who have been doing so much in contributing to the cause of the social justice around the world and the peace and nonviolent transformation of the world communitarian system, that we have gone so far that even during the pandemics, the walk has reached incredible places, including Mount Ararat, which was really amazing. Rajagopalji and Jilji reached Mount Ararat. That's the biblical place where the survivors of the big I would say, social and environmental catastrophe went there in the Bible. But at the same time, today, with the problems of climate change and with the problems of pandemics and et cetera, and the big states going to the arms race with each other, we are witnessing the situation. The community mobilization around the world is becoming very important, and the world is becoming one small community. And we can watch what's going on in the United States of America, or in Brazil, or in Argentina, or in South Africa, or in Ghana, or in New Zealand, or in Indonesia, and all the countries of the world are becoming equally important. And of course, it's very important to follow the example of Gandhiji. Gandhi was the greatest transformational leader in the 20th century who really changed the paradigm of talking from the language of violence to the language of nonviolence, ahimsa. And 4 S's that we are taught all the time, the Sarvodaya and Swadeshi and Svaraji, and all of those satyagraha stages, looking for truth by non-violent means and being direct and never ever retreating in face of such a grave, big dangers that today's world is giving to the community of the world. But we don't have the road back. There is no way to go back from that Mount Ararat where we were when we stopped. And we're not going to go back. We're going to go forward around the world and reach every village of the world with the vision of Gandhian equality and Gandhian freedom from the biological instincts, the biopolitics of the world. Today's world led by physiocrat, biological instinct, slavery propagators in the corporate sectors is basically deprived of the monopoly that they already had for so many years over the media. And with the propaganda of biological instincts, they were achieving the slavery of biological instincts. And the only voice that really was contradicting it in the times of Walter Lippmann was Mahatma Gandhi. When Walter Lippmann and his ideological brothers from the neoliberal camp were trying to promote the slavery of biological instincts, Mahatma Gandhi was the sole voice around the world, perhaps with a number of his friends and with his wife Kasturba, who were promoting the message of how to defeat the slavery of biopolitics. And the great center of biopolitics that time was Great Britain. And of course, we know lots of those places, London School of Economics and lots of other places that the biopolitics was, the physiocratic teachings were promoted. And right now, we are seeing a crisis, a big crisis in the bourgeois world, where Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden are fighting each other. Of course, both of them serve the corporations, but at the same time, this is the fight of the bourgeois elite that is not really fed up, and they're trying to get more resources, and they're fighting each other at the same time. And the world is nearing the brink of the big world war, because the powers to be and the bourgeois consciousness always needs more and more, and in this need, they need wars. And how to overcome, how to have a voice of community organizing, and how to change the paradigm, how to change the discourse, how to change the discourse of this today's world that is deprived of spirituality, and a true spirituality that was represented by Mahatma Gandhi. And what we see and what we have done in Georgia is that to change the discourse, you need to change the language by which the mainstream media, the CNNs and Fox Newses and all of those mainstream outlets of the media of the bourgeois propaganda are preaching, and to start talking a different language of not really just a tolerance, because tolerance means tolerating someone that we hate. No, it's tolerance is not enough. It's an embrace culture of embracing, opening up. And that's in a rather way that's more kind of a feminist kind of understanding of the world. It's an embrace rather than tolerating people that we hate. We should not be filled with hate, and we should not have to tolerate. We should have to be able to embrace in a polyphonic discourse, in a polyphonic culture of different but equal, different types of human beings on this earth. We are more than 7 billion today, and we are going to be reaching 8 billion very soon. But at the same time, we're reaching all the pandemics, and pandemics right now have found a way to unite humanity in some ways, to overcome the borders. And right now, the language of John Lennon and Imagine, the language of Imagine is becoming very, very, very important because the countries are being abolished. And the statist philosophy is being abolished. And that's another tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, because he was not a statist. He was a person who was struggling all his life for the equality of human beings, and ahimsa and Sarvodaya and Swadeshi economy and Swaraj and the freedom and Satyagraha, all of those notions that he introduced then were reinterpreted by different communities around the world in a different ways, like Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States and Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia. In Georgia, we had Zviad Gamsakhouri and Merab Kostava, the great leaders of Georgian national liberation movement, who were affected by Mahatma Gandhi's example. First of all, Mahatma Gandhi was the trendsetter and the leader that defied the breaking up of the Soviet Empire. And as Johan Galtung said, the Soviet Empire would defeat in 1990. It was just missed by 2 years. Yes, I mean, in 1 or 2 years. And he said the United States, the American empire will be broken up in 2020. And now we see these cataclysmic processes, and we hope that, and he also said that the American Republic would stay there. Not an empire, but a republic would stay there in 2020. And now we have a 2020, and this is a very, very important year for the whole humanity. We are going through incredible transformation. And this is the year where Jai Jagat is taking place, and we are marching around the world. And we're going to achieve our goal. We're going to get to Geneva. We're going to get to New York. We're going to get to United Nations of the earth and basically try to reform it. And that's incredible life opportunity for humanity in 2020, when all the empires are breaking up. And we need to be able to non-violently transform the world towards the world of ahimsa and Sarvodaya, the sustainable communities of the world, that all citizens of the world with their passports will be equal and not just subject to the few thousand of the rich and powerful, filled with the bourgeois consciousness of scarcity. We need to have a real, true, and I may recall Dianiwahu, one of the Native American leaders of the tribes, the feminist tribes, who says that we need to visualize and manifest abundance. Yes, that's what we need.
We have 1 more minute. Sorry, you can conclude your point.
Yes, and that's basically our vision. Our vision of community building is the community building through the discourse of arts, artistic discourse, as opposed to mainstream discourse of the journalists, but at the same time, the creativity, empathy, nonviolence, as Johan Galtung says, and building up the new community, which is based on the principles of Sarvodaya and Swadeshi, sustainable communities of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Irakli. Thank you for your comprehensive presentations and sharing. It's a very enriching for us. I have a couple of questions, not now, but later on. You have to if you share your thoughts later on. First is your presentation is basically you did in the very general. That's basically I had given the question. This is understanding of the non-violence leaders and the role and characteristics of the non-violence. It's a leadership, and also the what are the lauding that we did. Like you have a Gandhi Foundation in Georgia. What actually it's a Gandhi Foundation is doing in Georgia to develop the community leaders, and then what these leaders are doing in the community to change transformation on the basically focusing on the non-violence movements or transformations. That are these are some questions for me from my side to you. For the friends, it's basically I request to note your questions or to share your questions. We have a chat here, question and answer. Then we'll pass to the panelists later on. Now I move to Aggie and Martin. It's Zambia, UK, basically. Martin is Martin is a consultant in leadership and organization development, a designer and facilitator of the innovation and organization change process, a trainer, coach, and author. Martin serves a core faculty member of the Presencing Institute, and Aggie is the managing partner of the Beyond Business School Consulting, and she is also the co-founder of Ubuntu Lab, in an online and offline applied learning program for innovators, change makers, and emerging leaders on the African continent. In the recent past, she has designed and facilitated leadership and organization development program for Ubuntu Lab Africa Union. So I request both of you to share your basically the thoughts on the understanding and experiences on the community leadership. Request to Aggie and Martin.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to connect with everyone in this call. It is an honor for us to be invited to share the little experience which we are just at the beginning of. Living and working out of the United Kingdom, Aggie and I, on several occasions, we ask ourselves the question, how can we contribute to our mother continent, Africa? And at one time, because of our various involvements here in the Western world, we became part of a journey that started mobilizing people to learn together in their thousands. And there was a time when we had a global classroom of over 30,000 people. And when we checked behind the scenes, we noticed that only 3 places with 3 individuals in Africa connected. Our hearts were dampened. And it was at that point that we realized we had learned something in our upbringing that we thought might provide relevance to how we activate community leadership on our mother continent. Aggie will explain later how that works, but it was the concept that even our brother who connected and spoke earlier from Kaduna, Nigeria, talked about. When Aggie and I, in our home, we remembered the philosophy and life force of Ubuntu as an approach to life. Our hearts leapt with joy. The concept of Ubuntu summarizes and pulls together all these things we have been seeking to do as if to reinvent the wheel, ignoring that our forefathers and mothers had cracked something early for us. The life force of Ubuntu simply means, I am because you are. My well-being is intricately intertwined with your well-being. I cannot speak of my happiness if in the neighborhood, the happiness is not reigning. And we were fascinated as we began to explore this, that for our people, the concept of my well-being is dependent upon your well-being was not only limited to humans, it was including other aspects of nature, animals and plants, and the soil. That in the well-being we seek for ourselves, unless we seek the well-being of Mother Nature, our experience of well-being is in futility. And when you explore that notion of Ubuntu, then you realize, I cannot violate another person. I cannot violate the land which feeds me, which has buried my ancestors, which will feed my grandchildren's grandchildren. The notion of non-violence, therefore, is embedded within the concept of Ubuntu. When you are me, then I cannot abuse you. That's why, including nature, our people always apologized before they killed an animal for food, because they knew it had its own right to existence. My mother would get upset with us if we ate the first fruits of the rains of that year without, first of all, honoring our beliefs, honoring nature for gifting us with fruits. I am because you are is not just about human beings. It is about those who have gone before us, those who are present, Mother Nature, and those who will come millions of years after we have passed on. Aggie.
Thank you, Martin. So as Martin has said, once we realized that our continent was not being represented in this global movement that was starting to grow, we decided to start the Ubuntu Lab. And so we know that on the African continent, they are our brothers and sisters who are as concerned as we are about our continent. So what we did is we identified, well, the people we are calling national coordinators, though right now in the Ubuntu spirit, we are referring to them as elders. So we identified elders in the various countries. So I shared with them that we think if we worked together, identified other people within our countries, trained in the framework which Martin and I were privileged to be part of and learn the youth framework used by the Presencing Institute. And then we brought in our Ubuntu philosophy, we would be able to start activating our communities to bring about that future of Africa that we want. So we have in our about 19 countries, we have the national coordinators, we have our facilitators, and we also have people who have participated. So what we are seeing so far as part of the impact of this community leadership work that we started and for transforming Africa's future is that we are seeing ourselves as one continent instead of the colonial drawn boundaries. Those are dropping. We are just seeing, in fact, we refer to ourselves as the Ubuntu family. So we are all brothers and sisters living on Mother Earth and sharing in all the resources that Mother Earth has and coming together to see how can we collectively assist and help in addressing some of the challenges. So the process that we use, once you become aware of some of the issues that are affecting the community and you get to a stage where you want to try out what we call the prototype, try out some solutions of some of the issues. So people have identified issues of violence against women, they've identified issues of mental health, they have identified issues of lack of food, and many other issues that have been identified. So, and they are working towards addressing these issues. And then the other thing, which was not planned, which came about because of our coming together collectively as a continent, is once one travels to another country, you don't feel like you're a stranger, because you know that there's some brothers and sisters who are part of this Ubuntu Lab, and they come and help you around. So brotherhood and sisterhood is growing. And we also give each other emotional support. When we hear there's something like the other day, our sisters and brothers in Sudan reached out to say, there's going to be a protest here. Could you please keep us in our thoughts and prayers? We do that. So we support each other emotionally as well. And then also we have learned from each other's experiences. For instance, when COVID struck, I know COVID has not impacted Africa as much as it has in the Western world right now, but some of the countries in Africa have been impacted by Ebola and other diseases, and they have been able to address this. And we are learning from those as well. So there's a lot of learning of different experiences that is going on. So that is some of the things that I wanted to share. I don't know if you want to add anything more, Martin. I think we're within our time, unless you say we still have a bit of time.
Okay, thank you for Aggie and Martin. It's a good experience from your side and a good innovative work from your side. Thus, I noted it's 4 points. One is you yourself. It's started the non-violence actions. That's your family and reactivating your community. That's the very important. And also you talk on the Mother Earth. That's the very important. Basically, Mother Nature. That's a very important. And that's another part. It's an important part is apologize to kill the animal, but it's a violent work. But you apologize. That's the very important task. And then also it's train the lots of community leaders from your side. So I have still think it's a key 2 questions. One is what did you find the kind of key characters of your trained community leaders? That's you are working in your country or other continent as well. And second is what's really like you're learning that you are developing the community leaders. That's the two questions. And now I'm moving to another panelist. She's Annie Luke from Canada. And Annie Luke is completing her PhD in educational leadership and policy at the University of Toronto in Canada. She also holds an MBA degree with specialization in non-profit management from School of Business at York University, also in Canada. Her dissertation research examines leadership in a collective organizations where all the staff members share the responsibility of running a community organizations and the other adult literacy programs. I request to Annie your very rich experiences on this.
Thank you, Jagat. Before I start, I would like to first acknowledge the land that I work and live on. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. Today, I will share with you the research project that I've been working on for the last 2 years, looking at leadership in a collective organization. First, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a researcher and also a practitioner in adult literacy education. Learners who come to adult literacy classes include both young and old adults who struggle with reading and writing. There are a wide range of reasons why someone ends up struggling with reading and writing. It could be learning disabilities, difficulty fitting into schools, and challenging political or family situations. People who struggle with literacy are marginalized because of the stigma attached to anyone who have trouble reading and writing. And they're further marginalized because their literacy challenges could keep them from participating in different aspects of civil engagement, like voting and employment. The research project that I want to talk to you today about is with one of the community organizations that offers literacy education for adults here in Toronto, Canada. Toronto is the largest city in Canada with roughly 3 million residents. The organization that I'm going to introduce you to is called Parkdale Project Read, or for short, PPR. It is located in the Parkdale neighborhood in the west end of the city of Toronto. PPR first opened its door to adult learners back in the mid-1980s. One of the unique features of PPR is that it uses a collective structure. Right now, PPR is run by 4 community literacy workers. They all share the same job title, the same salary, the same work hours. They work together as a collective. From its early days, PPR took the view that adult literacy is a social justice issue, more than just a technical issue to decode text. It also takes on a systemic and structural perspective in terms of adult education. This perspective can be summed up by one of the former staff members who quoted Leela Watson, an Indigenous activist from Australia. Leela Watson said, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." The collective structure that PPR uses is very much an expression of this sentiment. The same sentiment extends beyond the collective structure to everyone from staff members to learners who have an active say in how the programs are run, and to community partners who collaborate with PPR on various initiatives. We can say that the collective structure is an explicit act of resistance to how society places people in higher or lower positions and marginalizes those in lower positions, like the learners who come to PPR. By using a collective structure, PPR has managed to specifically equalize the power among all the collective members. I'm going to share with you the 5 different ways how the collective members manage to equalize the power among themselves. First, the collective structure clearly says that they're all equal. This is very important. By specifically using a collective structure, PPR makes an unambiguous commitment that everyone is indeed equal. There is no boss, no supervisor, no manager, no subordinate. There is no designated leaders and no designated followers. The structure is intended as a prefiguration or as an example to show that it is possible to work as equals. It is a bold statement because it goes against the grain from what we usually do. But this collective structure helps PPR set the tone in how the collective members would work with and relate to each other. Second, all the collective members participate in consensus decision-making. Everyone knows enough of what everyone else is doing to be able to discuss different issues in detail, and most importantly, to stand behind their decisions together. How they manage to do it might sound a bit scary to some of us. They pretty much copy each other on every single email. They also hold weekly staff meetings where they talk through and decide on different things together. Sometimes these meetings could run for hours. Although it is sometimes overwhelming for the collective members to keep up with what's going on, they believe it is part of their responsibility to know enough so that they could participate in consensus decision-making. Another way the collective members share their leadership is that the collective members share their work with each other with a lot of flexibility and fluidity. One of the participants told me that the division of labor among the collective members could be as simple as whoever picks up the phone and ends up talking to someone bringing in an initiative. The collective members would support each other in taking on something that they have never done before. That allows them to grow and gain experience both in breadth and also in depth. One of the former collective members told me that on any given day, he could be buying a watermelon for a group class, cutting checks for expenses, or negotiating a partnership with a local school. Everyone does everything. The division of labor has nothing to do with seniority, experience, education, but that everyone truly shares the work with everyone else. This flexible and fluid approach to sharing leadership is connected to the fourth way the collective works to equalize everyone's power within the organization. The collective members value each other's contributions equally. We're all different from each other, obviously. We bring different things to the table. But unlike in a hierarchy where our differences are used to slot us into higher or lower positions, the collective structure says no one is higher or lower than anyone else. This means that the collective members value the work each of them does equally. Combined with consensus decision-making, the collective ensures that everyone has an equal voice when it comes to leadership. For example, one of the current collective members has been with PPR for more than 20 years, and another one has only been with the organization for about 3 years. While they may do different things within the organization, their voices are equally heard and valued at the table as equals. Finally, not only do the collective members work hard in maintaining equality and collaboration within the collective, they're also very aware of how the rest of society places individuals in higher and lower positions. For example, even though PPR is a collective, a lot of people, like potential volunteers coming into the organization, might not be aware of that. They would assume, as most of us would, that there must be a boss running the place. Especially if they run into any kind of conflict situation, people tend to ask to speak to the boss. And more often than not, they would assume that the white person is the boss over a non-white person or a person of color. The collective members are very aware of sometimes this extra power that other people would give them simply because of who they are. They're very conscious in making sure that their voices do not dominate over any others. In this sense, the burden to make sure that everyone is heard is not always only carried by those who are marginalized, but also shared with those who have privileges. The collective at PPR is by no means perfect. They have conflicts, they have disagreements, but the collective structure creates an environment where the collective members have to work with each other democratically, collaboratively, and equally, where respect is embedded in the structure itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. It's a comprehensive, for your comprehensive presentation. You raised the 3-4 points for my notice. There are a number of, but I would like to share 3-4. First one is you talk on the education and literacy. That's very important for the leadership. That's the first I noted down. The second point is you talk on the collective kind of structure and collective power. That's really help to develop the nonviolent leaders. And third one is basically all for equal, no boss, no junior. So that's also important for the community leaders. And fourth one is it's basically you talk on the community leaders and community transformation from the collective way, collective power and collective initiatives. That's very important for all of us. Now we have a final panelist. It's Sonia. She's from Mexico, and Sonia is a social artist. Came to India to research on the mandala concept, a universal archetype for peace and harmony. Since 2004, she has been associated with the Gujarat Vidyapith University, founded by Mahatma Gandhi, India, to develop the Ora Ol Mandala, a movement that visualizes the planet as a whole mandala, while experimenting with the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi and the tenets of the creative nonviolence and interdependence that will that also reflect the nature of mandala. Ora Ol Mandala was initially used as a community-based peacemaking technique for bringing different religion groups together in Ahmedabad, India, during the time and in the aftermath of the community riots. Subsequently, it was used to connect Mexican communities affected by different social conflict. So I hand over the floor to Sonia to share your experiences and what you are doing in Mexico, and what is your main understanding on the community leadership.
Thank you,
Sonia.
Jagat.
Sonia, before we begin with your presentation, we would like to play a video from Ora Mandala, Sonia's organization, which would give a little background, and it will also act as a slight break for the entire group. Yes. So Jay, please go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria.
Thank you. There we go. Please enjoy.
Hay una llave que puede abrir las fronteras en todas las naciones. Hay una llave para descubrir la verdad en todas las religiones. Hay una llave para compartir la unidad con todos los seres del mundo. Soy Hare Krishna, hinduista, musulmana y también cristiana. Soy americana, europea, africana, la llave está en mí. Ninguna frontera nos podrá impedir dar amor a los pueblos hermanos. El patriotismo no debe excluir al resto del mundo. Soy americana, europea, asiática, africana. ¿Dónde está mi corazón? Mi objetivo, mi razón, la llave está en mí. falta una sola religión. Es mejor dar amor y respeto a la diversidad. Y tú aspiras a una desoladora uniformidad. Soy Hare Krishna, hinduista, musulmana y también cristiana. O si soy católica, budista, sabatista, la llave está en mí. Soy americana, europea, asiática, africana. ¿Dónde está mi corazón, mi objetivo, mi razón? La llave está en mí.
Thank you. Handing it back to the panel now.
Sonia, you could begin your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ria. And thank you, Jagat. And namaste to everyone. And greetings from Mexico. Thank you for inviting me to participate to this session. It has been very constructive for me to listen to your words. And I have thought to share with you about developing community leadership through the co-creation of peace zones or peace territories, basically a Mexican experiment that refers to the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi, his nonviolent guide of action for people's autonomy, that we consider useful as never before. In the context of the experiment, the Mexican context, almost 40 years of neoliberalism with its consequences, land dispossessions, destruction of territories and their bioculturalities, commodification of natural resources, and structural violence generated by many years of a corrupted social justice, a corrupted justice system, sorry, and social inequality, a great social inequality, and about violence, talking about violence since from 2006 till the beginning of the year, 300,000 people have been murdered, and more than 61,000 are missing due to the war on drug cartels declared by former President Calderon in 2006. So in this context, and in this coronavirus era, many people are now encouraged to take leadership towards community autonomy. Since the last 15 years, we have been exploring in different conflicts area of the country, from north to south, in urban and rural, with the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi in a creative way. We try to use art and culture as an instrument for social transformation. And from this process, a core group of, if we can call them trainers, for training of trainers, has arisen. It is a core group always in progress, because is composed by volunteers who are ready to work for their communities and by training themselves and training others on the practice of nonviolence, of ahimsa. So this core group is a seed for unity in diversity, the basis of the constructive program, and there are participating educationalists, land defenders, human rights activists, feminists, artists, some scientists, students, and indigenous people who are very important in the movement because of the restoration of the common identity. So they are the main trainers for the restoration of the common identity, community identity. So this, if we call it the training of trainers methodology, is basically oriented to Sarvodaya, the upliftment of all. So nobody should be left behind in the path of peace with justice. So everyone, each participant is a fundamental element to reach Sarvodaya, the upliftment of all. And it is a responsibility of all also to work for real inclusion and participation. So the individual and collective practice of ahimsa, of nonviolence, is the transverse axis of the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi and its main 3 steps. So in the first step, community unity is developed by self-organized and from below collective actions like assemblies, like all religions prayers, like different expressions of conviviality, like eating together, participatory theater, and all these collective expressions are the basis for unity in diversity and for the strengthening of the communities. So through the strengthening of the communities, we go into the second step, that is constructive works emerged by this community unity. So people can really understand what they need. So people can respond to this practice of community unity by developing constructive works conducted by the same members. Members who maybe have these skills and talents, but are also ready to train others who don't have that particular knowledge, but that they are ready to learn and open in this way perspectives for education for all. What we have noted is that the young people are more inclined to be inclusive, and often also we have observed that their tendency to decentralize the power, so to change their role in order to decentralize the power and stimulate in this way cooperation instead of competition. So through these 2 steps, community is training itself and becoming a soul force that can go into the 3rd step when is necessary with direct actions, satyagraha, so the insistence on truth, until the last consequences, without fear, with love. So we have many examples of communities that are doing direct actions in this way. So these 3 steps basically are, we are trying through these 3 steps to reduce the cracks that allow violence to permeate our territories. We know that there is still a long way to walk to reach effective peace zones, but we also know that we will persist in this effort. So with this spirit, and motivated also from the sessions, Jai Jagat Armenia sessions and discussions on peace zones, people from the two very sensitive borders communities in the northwest of the country. Tijuana and San Diego is one, and Mexico, Mexicali and Calexico is the other one. People, they have decided to work together for giving, for going ahead with the agreements that we have established during our last assembly of people, neighborhoods, and communities that was organized in Tijuana before the coronavirus era. And you should know that, I'm sure you know that Tijuana is ranked as one of the most violent cities in the world. But as a counterpart, there are amazing people who are facing daily the humanitarian migration and refugee crisis. So these people now are working to create groups for achieving some level of food security using agroecological techniques, training people to face community health problems, preferably through the use of traditional medicine. So here the component and the help of the indigenous people is very substantial, encouraging small industries with the territories for production of clothing and housing materials, making community schools functional, and accessing credits, creating regional banks, and developing barter economy. So the two borders, the two US-Mexico borders, the distance between the two is around 100 miles. According to our chancellor, I belong to the Gujarat Vidyapith University, founded by Mahatma Gandhi in 1920. And according to our chancellor, Dr. Hilabat's perspective on building 100 miles communities, we may visualize this territory between the two borders as a potential laboratory for community autonomy. To conclude, I strongly believe in people power. I think that people power can create in any side of the world peace zones or many other constructive works for to develop generations of nonviolent leaders, and in this way accomplish to the peace dream of our ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for your comprehensive presentations. I noted some points. You talk a very comprehensive way. That's the first one is basically we start from the volunteers, basically practice to develop the community leaders. And then you go on the next point is the community identity and community unity. That's the very important for the community leadership. And that's the third you talk basically education for all, focusing on the non-violence and then the people's power. That's the very important. And then you talk on the satyagraha, but what did you do on that is satyagraha? That's a question from a side. And then you talk on the agroecology. Is there any practice on the agroecology by the indigenous peoples that you did? And basically, it's people don't know. I think what is the mean by Sarvodaya, because it's all the participants, they are not aware on the Sarvodaya. So that's my my side, and thank you for your great presentations. Ria?
Yes, probably we can get into discussion and addressing our Q&A questions. So yes. Possibly, I think from Irakli, Jan, we can begin the answering some of the questions that was raised by Jagat ji. In addition to that, we have some questions raised by others as well. So probably we can begin with Irakli Jan, and Just to note, we have around 15 to 20 minutes for the session. So quickly, if we can communicate our point, that would be really good. Thank you.
But before going to Irakli, I would like to share my experience so that it will be helpful to others as well. In Nepal, it's we are developing it's community leaders from the basically the ground level. That's what we call village land rights forum. That's the community level groups, and then we train the village land rights group members, one male and one female. They develop the other members so that we develop the community leaders through the mobilizations, not only from the class sessions or some training only. It's in our experience, leaders develop from the work rather than from the training and other way. I mean that it's a combine of the mobilizations, sessions, trainings, room trainings, exposure. There are different techniques, but more on people like be a leader of the community is mobilizations and their understanding the issues. While they understand the issues, they became a kind of community leader. They lead the issue, they facilitate the issue, they change the issue, they visited the local stakeholders, and then they transform their community one level to another level. And they elected as a local government, they elected even the parliament, like they are nominated even in the parliament. So that it's in our case, we have a land and agrarian rights movement. And then we have a village land rights forum. We develop the leaders there. We have a district land rights forum. We develop the leaders there. We have a national land rights forum. We develop the leaders. And these community leaders develop their members. And mobilizations is a non-violence mobilization is a very important part in our context of Nepal. So it could be helpful for you to answer the remaining questions. Thank you. Irakli?
Irakli, Jan, you can.
Yes. Yes, I think, first of all, thank you to all of the participants. I learned a lot from your presentations and from different traditions that we are really listening to and kind of really, really learning a lot from different national traditions for different groups around the world. And today is the time to learn, but at the same time to unite. And as you were saying, and some we can call it eclectic, we can call it synthetic or synergetic, and all uniting the energies around the world, because the world is becoming one country. And we can see it very, very openly today that we are facing very similar challenges, and pandemics has already thrown a light to it also. I mean, it's around the world, and we are all dealing with this situation, and we are all, as a humanity, also dealing with different situations. As far as the mobilization technology goes, I would agree with the phrase that we are doing this work. And actually, the strategy of the embrace that we have adopted in Georgia since 1989, we have been through different revolutions. And for instance, in 1989, we had the breakup of the Soviet Union, in which the Satyagraha and Ahimsa were the leading notions. Actually, when the breakup of the Soviet Union was going on in 1989, when I was very young and we were participating in those demonstrations and leading the youth movement, that Gandhi and Satyagraha was the main object and main leading line in the revolution to breaking up the Soviet Empire. And then, of course, we had a number of social transformative events in Georgia. And in 2003, we had so-called Rose Revolution, which was a non-violent revolution for which we have translated Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagrahi principles. And the fact that, of course, it needs a translation, it needs a training, it needs an educational aspect. And these are all very much needed aspects, but the practice is number one. Practice is the best learning capacity. For instance, if we adopt the culture of embrace in Georgia in 13th century. Queen Tamara has practiced it. Yes, the Queen Tamara, Georgia was the strongest. It has about 25 centuries of history, but it was strongest during the Queen Tamara, when she was leading the peace council led by Khwashak Tsokali and Kravai Jaheli, those two women who were the main diplomats. And this was kind of a very, very feminist gesture. In the 13th century, not many countries had a peace council and diplomatic relationship council, basically a foreign office consisting of just women. Khwashak Tsokali and Kravai Jaheli's reform with Queen Tamara has inspired then a great phenomenon of Shalva Halsikheli, which came into the being in 2012, around like that, in 1212, actually, about 10 centuries ago, 8 centuries ago, Shalva Halsikheli, who created the culture of Shavlego, the polyphonic singing mechanism that to empower and inspire many, many people to sing and act together in a unison. The art and creativity really helps to bring people's energies together. And this is an intuitive charm. As Bergsonian philosophy says that we need to be detached from simple empiricist materialism. Materialism is not working. We have seen it already. But the spiritual path through creativity is the path towards the transformative action around the world. And Shalva Halsikheli understood it, and that the people dedicated Shavlego to him, yes, and that there is a great song of the class consciousness in Georgia, Chakrulo, which is a polyphonic song which reflects the different voices, different noises of different generations, different languages, different cultures, different races, different groups, and different gender groups, all of those things at the same song, and they are really leading this energy towards unification of a human race unification, and no non-profit hesitation, no bourgeois alienation. We just want a shemuzization, making love between the nations. And then Bravo Zamieri's song also is a polyphonic song that united Rain musicians in 2003, and Rain musicians were the ones who brought together community action in 2003 that led to the Rose Revolution.
Irakli Jan.
Irakli Charkiani, a late Irakli Charkiani, great guy. Yes, a great guy was leading this transformative action. So there were a number of those, and I just listed the Rose Revolution, then it was the Egalitarian Institute, Create Foundation, others, and all of those were based work and arts-based inspirational projects that were led by intuitive beginning and education at the same time.
Yes, thank you, Irakli Jan, for giving that brief description of how that Rose Revolution and the other revolutions were taken forward there. Thank you so much. We would like to move on to Aggie and Martin. Again, I would like to reiterate that we have got only 10 more minutes, and after this we have a performance, a live performance. So keeping in mind of the time will be really helpful. Thank you. We have a question from the audience for Aggie and Martin, I think, which is also important. So you can quickly cover it up probably. It is about how is a prototype for social inequalities being built in an Ubuntu lab. The other is what gives you hope to continue this Ubuntu lab project? Yes, Aggie and Martin. Yeah.
Okay, I'll quickly answer on the one, what gives us hope to continue this Ubuntu lab project, in that before we even knew that COVID would start, we started this project, and 2 years ago. So we were already connecting online across the continent and finding ways of how we could address some of the challenges that we face. And right now, I think the world is looking for that connectivity and collective leadership for the future of the world. So that gives us hope that what we started in Ubuntu Lab will continue because the world needs it. Martin will explain about the prototypes.
But maybe for me, prototypes are simply a way of trying to move from intention to action. And everything we think about, we move it from mere words to action, because the world will only change if we take action. And I just wanted to quickly look at the question of criteria. What was the criteria? We began by simply asking a very basic question. Who of our colleagues on the African continent are having sleepless nights, just like what we are doing? And we found 2 or 3. And we asked them to also ask the same question. Are you having sleepless nights? Yes, then can we try and learn together? And they would also ask. So when we talk about the first class we had of 400 people, it arose out of people looking for others who felt the same way. And now we know that that is bubbling as we go along. And what was magical and continues to be magical is that it's like all of us in our individuality are sitting there wondering what next. And yet when one extends a hand, you become stronger. At the same time, you realize the much wisdom that lies on those people you are beginning to connect with. We are seeing those we thought we were training become our teachers because they are sitting with a lot of knowledge and experience. Thank you.
And just to add a bit on what Martin has said, some of the work that we were doing, like holding discussions, cafes in the evenings, are being held by part of our facilitators and elders. So the leadership is not only Martin and myself. So the other members of the community are also taking lead, and even in the participation of the global activation and intention, global activation of intention and action, which the Presencing Institute did the past 13 weeks. We had a lot of Africans now participating in that, and they were taking the lead. And in the global forum that is being arranged for the 10th and the 11th, again by the Presencing Institute, we have about 50 people from Africa signed up, and they'll be participating. So what we said inspired us to start this is already being achieved, and we are seeing ourselves having more Africans participating at global level.
Thank you, Martin and Aggie. So I think from Irakli Jan's presentation and from Martin and Aggie, your presentation, something that comes very profoundly is the words practice and action. So practice and action is bringing people together as communities, and sustaining it is what I get to learn from all of it. So I would like Annie and Sonia to, in the respective order, to quickly give us a conclusion statement and addressing the questions that Jagatji also raised, so that we can conclude this entire meeting. And we'll end with Jagatji's conclusion for the whole day. Thank you. Annie, would you like to go first? And then Sonia?
Yes.
Yes.
It's been very interesting to hear all the different presentations and the stories and experiences from different parts of the world. I think on one hand, we're all doing different things that are specific to the context where we are. But I think at the same time, I think, you know, like Jagat already said, that there's also a lot of commonality that I think very much we're all teachers and students at the same time. We're all learning from each other. And I think that is kind of the basis of the equality. And I think that to me is a special feature of community leadership, is that we're not, you know, when we talk about community leaders, we're not talking about people who are just leading people and just expecting other people to follow, but really is to create a circle of equal participants, so that we actually start envisioning a different way of relating to each other and to working with one another. So I find it just very, very inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. The circle of community members, I think, leads very well to Sonia, who works on Aura Mandala, which is again a circle of community. Please, Sonia.
Thank you, Ria. We also believe in learning by practicing. And a confession, I'm Italian originally, and I'm an artist, but I have changed totally my paradigms by learning with the Indian people, with the Mexican people, the art of the word. So we call it mandala, the offering of the all elements. And this offering comes from the heart, is a pop art that everyone can express. And this is a way to reach our community unity. So my heart is telling me that the Jai Jagat, the victory to the planet, is the way really to connect all of us through our heart, as we are composed by the elements, and in a vision of oneness, of interdependence. So I really want to thank you for the learning of today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jagatji, final words from your side to bringing us as a community together across the world. Jagatji, you're on mute if you're speaking. You're on mute.
Oh, thank you for all the panelists and friends. I would like to share 4-5 points from my side. First is for the community level or community nonviolence leaders. There are different methods, different techniques based on the context, country, and it is not like the universalized methods or techniques. So we have to look the different methods and techniques based on the context. That's the first one. The second one is basically we talk on the collective actions and community unity. That's really develop the community leaders and then the nonviolence actions. If the community are basically community divided in different groups, that creates the conflict, and then that's a really difficult situation. The third one is basically we talk on the train and mobilize the young. Young are the basically they need the kind of education of the non-violence. Otherwise, they could go the violence actions. And then fourth one is basically it's a leaders. They could develop the leaders. So not only the central level things. It's a ground level. It's a exchanging, and then the actions are more important rather than imposing from the central level. And the final one is basically the cultural kind of initiatives. They also empower the community peoples. So that's really like they mobilize the peoples for the non-violence actions. So in this context, these are some points from our side. But for the educations, we have a kind of self. It's starting from the self. It's a self transformations from the all of us, and then we could change the. We could develop the community leaders. So again, thanks for all the panelists and friends. Thank you very much.